Castlevania 64 has always been, to my recollection, a black sheep installment in the series, a game made in an era where classic franchises were trying to go full 3D to limited success, a game that was janky and not fun to play and was more or less forgotten in the annals of series history. But the game got pretty decent press when it came out. That honestly kinda surprised me, as did the forum posts I was looking at which casually referred to it as a good game, when I've heard nothing but bad things about this game. Perhaps some of that can be boiled down to the pro 3D bias that existed in the gaming media in the 90s, as I went into in my previous video, but when you really think about it, you'd believe that such an attitude would have cooled off by the time this game released. Castlevania for the Nintendo 64 didn't end up releasing until 1999, when this era of gaming was almost over with. I guess my own bias is that prior to actually playing it, my only exposure to this title was the Angry Video Game Nerd episode. But more recently, there have been high quality videos which took a more analytical and positive look at Castlevania 64 and saw it from a different lens. I really respect that and think the ones I've seen were really good. But that did get me thinking, maybe I'd like the game. I don't know, it's possible. You never know unless you try it for yourself and make your own opinion. And yeah, I wasn't a fan of this game. So how was I gonna play Castlevania 64, you might ask? Well, I first had to get the right gear in order because N64 games are very unique. They're simple to emulate on PC, but unlike most other consoles, I feel like using a basic Xbox controller does the experience a disservice. This is the controller I use for basically every game I play, because most controllers like NES, SNES, Genesis, or what have you are relatively easy to transfer the layouts of to a modern scheme, without really losing any of the original experience. The N64 is not like that at all. This was the first controller ever designed for 3D gameplay, and it definitely shows because there are no other game controllers like this. There's one stick in the middle, a D-pad on the left, and two face buttons, with not a second stick on the right, but the C buttons. L and R are on top, and the Z button is on the back. As I said, there are no other controllers like this, and every game uses the N64 controller in its own unique way. The stick is also raised way higher and is far less sensitive than the analog sticks that would follow it, which changes the way the stick feels to use. So I thought to have the most authentic experience, I needed a PC adapter to use a native N64 controller to get the intended experience. Honestly, I only bring this up because I just wanted to show that the box it came in was one of these ones that needed scissors to be opened. The worst kind of box. And then it took me way too long to figure out how to set up my controller with the emulator I was using. Now, I'm sure you're curious, are you meant to be impressed right now? And the answer is...
Not at all. I just wanted you to know how hard it was.
When you boot up the game, you have the choice of playing easy or normal difficulty with an unlockable hard mode. Whatever you do, don't pick easy mode, because this is one of those games where you're locked out of the ending if you pick easy. At that point, you might as well not even have one, but whatever, I picked normal. And you can then choose between playing as Reinhardt or Carrie. Reinhardt is the basic Belmont-type character as he fights with the vampire killer whip and is here to stop Dracula from taking over the world like usual. Carrie is the easier alternative since she can shoot projectiles at long range and has better close-range combat than Reinhardt. Though this game was actually decanonized from the Castlevania series a long time ago. When doing a series timeline, Koji Igarashi, who directed Symphony of the Night, put a couple of the games on the side story non-canon list. Castlevania Circle of the Moon, Legends, and 64 were considered non-canon or side games. So nothing that happens here matters all that much, but that's not really a huge loss anyway because nothing of substance happens in the game to begin with. Just that you're Reinhardt Schneider, the latest to wield the whip to fight Dracula as he's being resurrected, and the setting is the mid-19th century, but otherwise it's a very basic Castlevania adventure. Before playing, I knew I had to consult the manual because, as I said, every N64 game used the controller in different ways. For this game, A is jump and B is the primary attack button, and you move around with the stick. That felt pretty intuitive, but then the C buttons are all used as follows. The right C button is how you interact with things like opening doors or picking up collectibles, because you can't just walk into them in this game, you need to pick them up. The left C button does a close range attack with a dagger. The down C button uses your special weapons like the holy water or the cross. And the up C button changes the camera between 3 different modes. There's the normal view, action view, and the battle view. Action view is allegedly better for platforming, battle for combat, and normal for, I don't know, running around. But I say allegedly because I never noticed a functional difference between the action and normal view. Battle view felt like it pulled the camera back a little bit, but not by much. I had a real struggle with this game when I first started it because in my first session, I beat 2.5 levels, but to the game's defense, I realized it wasn't actually the game's fault. I had the most deaths of the entire game right at the beginning because of these jumps over a poison river. It's like the game had a mind of its own as I tried to jump up the platforms only for me to side jump or back jump into the abyss. But I was like, it can't possibly play like this for real, can it? It got me thinking that this controller might be faulty, so I checked and the stick was drifting and never rested in the dead center. which was annoying because I specifically got this controller for this video in the hopes that wouldn't happen. So I then had to drive back to my parents' house to grab my N64 controller from the basement and use that instead, and it was perfectly functional. So my time with the game got much easier once I did that. So in hindsight, level 1 isn't really anything super remarkable. The combat is basic and bland besides the wolf enemy who might give you trouble, but otherwise it's very by the numbers 3D platforming. In my first session, I was playing in the Discord VC with my buddies Rye Rule, King K, and Tactical Bacon Productions, and I was actually having quite a lot of fun with how little fun I was having with the game. Like when the skeletons were riding motorcycles, Ryan got a big laugh out of that, which was funny. And then I kept dying to the jumps in level 2 because of my controller, which was certainly funny to see. Fuck!
You're playing this shit.
Do it for the content. What's in the bag? Is it his sponsorship money?
He's got fries in there.
Put the fries in the bag, Reinhardt. Though, when thinking about it, the visual of skeletons on a motorbike is pretty funny, but also interesting because around when this game takes place, the 1850s, motorcycles didn't exist. Neither did the other 20th century technology you see around Dracula's castle, which could be said that maybe. The point is that Dracula is actually a bit ahead of his time, but that's also not really the kind of video I want to make. Instead, I wanted to document how I felt while playing. In level 3, I got really confused because I met this older explorer who thinks we should leave. So I pressed on and found the gate to the garden that was locked, and then the door to the archive was also locked, so I didn't know what to do next. So I ran back and tried talking to the old man again, and he said that a woman appears to tend to the indoor rose garden at dawn, an area I already passed through at night. So I just waited for the time to pass until dawn to see this cutscene. To speed this up, you can use your sun and moon cards. These automatically turn the in-game clock to the next day, but only after triggering this cutscene will the old man decide to give you the key to the archive where you can then find a key to the hedge maze. Yes, that all felt very intuitive. But it actually got more annoying once I got to the hedge maze. I could barely even think about what direction I was going in because these dog enemies are relentless and unkillable. To make matters worse, Frankenstein's monster with a chainsaw hand was also relentless. So the three of them chased me down the entire time, and they do massive damage if you're caught. Like, the dogs freeze you in place, so the chainsaw will take chunks out of that health bar. I got killed by the chainsaw dude, and the most recent save point was before entering the building with the old guy, so I had to do literally all of it over again. Because this game doesn't have checkpoints, only save points, and you basically only have one life. But then on the second attempt, I just ran for my life and hoped to avoid the chainsaw dude and didn't try to fight them at all. Level 4 was when I was like, oh man, how much of this game is left? You're now underground and are trying to find a way back up, and it was so confusing because everything looked the same and this game has no map to speak of, so I had to build a mental one. Which kinda sucked when the draw distance was so low and the areas looked so repetitive and samey. The solution sucked too. Get on this moving platform, get off here, and fend off threats until the blue platform comes around and ride it to the exit. But if you take a hit here, you'll fall into the spikes, die, and have to load the most recent save point. When I got what I had to do, I just wasn't having any fun. And also, I was routinely thinking to myself, nothing dies down here. So many enemies in this game have so much HP, which sucks when the combat is garbage. Let me tell you, level 5 is the fucking worst one by far. Many rooms have locked doors that don't open until you kill all the cannon fodder. But the combat is fundamentally unfun. The thing is, with classic Castlevania, the combat was simple, but also worked because it was a 2D platformer. The whip stopping you in place was a good choice. You needed to be aware of your situation because you were locked into that attack when you pressed the button. So you had to get a feel for if the whip was going to actually have the reach to hurt the enemy or not. If not, it was probably going to hit you. It wasn't super satisfying to fight enemies in classic Vania like it later became in Symphony of the Night, but instead, combat in these games is just a tool for platforming challenges. In this game, combat is rarely so perilous. Half the time I was just standing there whipping and the enemies were dying after a really long time. The other half of the time they're just running around so much that the whip just can't keep up. Special weapons become the only option, but I hated wasting those because of how much better weapons were on bosses than the whip. In general, the camera really sucked in combat. Games like Castlevania 64 really show you why a game like Zelda Ocarina of Time was a masterpiece worthy of the hype when it came out. The combat loop in that game with the lock-on and the camera was the best in the business back then. Castlevania 64 has a lock-on, but what's the point of a goddamn lock-on when the camera does not focus on the enemy more than half the time? The game is capable of doing that as certain boss fights show, but much of the time you're screwed. But combat is only one reason why this level sucked so much. The other one is that it goes on for an eternity. The main gimmick is that you need to blow up the walls. To do so, you need the explosive, which is upstairs, and then another substance which is in the basement. So first, I go upstairs 2 floors, find I went to the wrong way, and can't make progress, so I go back and go the other way, and then I need to blow up the wall. I grab the explosive, and then need to go all the way back downstairs to grab the other thing 2 floors up again to blow up the wall. But now there's an explosive wall in the downstairs section, so you need to go all the way back down. It sounds tedious, and it is, but then you realize the painful gimmick with the explosive is that if you jump at all, you die immediately. If you die, you're back to the save point, which is mercifully included in the room with the explosive. But the 2-floor trek is actual agony. It blows you up if Reinhardt is at any point in the air, which means this part with crumbling floors will blow you up if you aren't fast enough. But then the platform is so small that it's possible to fall off and blow up. Then these gears might position Reinhardt like 1 pixel off the ground and you get blown up. And then one time I actually made it to the basement, but the fucking skeleton on the motorcycle managed to hit me, so I blew up and had to do it all over again. This part was truly the stuff of nightmares. I don't know what they were thinking. It's just not fun to play. I was then like, God, how am I supposed to finish this game and the entire second campaign and the entire expansion game? The answer turned out to be that I really didn't need to. As I said, Carrie plays mostly the same game as Reinhardt, just with a few levels that are unique. And as stated, there was an expansion on the game too. Castlevania Legacy of Darkness, which also came out on the Nintendo 64. But this is just more of the same if you ask me. It's hailed as the definitive edition of Castlevania 64, and I'd say, yeah, it is more or less by default. It can use the N64 controller's expansion pack for enhanced graphics and has 2 extra playable characters. But again, despite some exclusive levels, it's just more of the same. But you have to unlock Reinhardt in this version though. Cornell, the new starting guy, gets a new opening level on a pirate ship, but then it's the same thing as before. He uses a long-range beam to attack, so he's kind of like a mix of playing as Carrie and Reinhardt. This version reduced the amount of camera types to just 2, which made sense, but then you can also use the D-pad to control the camera, and this kind of sucked. I mean, to do that, you need to move your entire left hand from the analog stick to the left side of the controller, but it's just really awkward mid-gameplay to do that. And the camera sucked in general in this. I don't know, I had an easier time with the camera in the vanilla 64. But it didn't really matter, I just thought the game wasn't good either way. Having to unlock the other characters also felt like padding. I'm not playing Castlevania 64 4 times, once is enough. But anyway, past that point, I was just making a beeline for the end of the game. Most of the later levels were a breeze by comparison. You know, level 6's gimmick was that you'll be locked in these rooms to fight an enemy, but the holy water made pretty quick work of them. I did die by falling into the acid a few times though. Level 7 was actually called the Frame Rate Fortress, which seemed odd for Dracula to name it that until I realized the truth. It's a room covered in lava, but the game starts chugging to like 5 frames per second anytime effects were on the screen, and it was torturous to look at, especially to platform in. So that was annoying for sure. Level 8 is just a battle with death, and if you have the axe and enough special weapon ammo, you'll certainly get through it pretty easy. And then the final level is the Clock Tower of Clunk. This one doesn't have much in the way of enemy spam, so that's nice, I guess, but the real problem here is how boring it is. It's 3 platforming rooms straight, and your goal is finding the key to get through the door, 3 times in a row. But with each passing step, I knew I was closer and closer to the end of the game. The first phase of Dracula confused me because I couldn't damage him, but then I realized I needed to jump and whip him, and that was the way to do it. And then there were 2 more phases after that, but either way, I was just like, well, glad the game's over. Reinhardt saves the day, Dracula's dead again, the game is over. So yeah, not much more I can really say about this one. I personally thought it sucked. I don't know, for a game that came out over a year after Ocarina of Time, it just feels like they could have done a lot more to make the game work in 3D. Even 3D action games released before Ocarina had more compelling systems than this. If you like Castlevania 64, that's certainly fine. It's a video game, it ain't that deep, it just wasn't for me. I just found the game very boring and occasionally frustrating. What is odd though is that the series never really invested heavily in 3D games after this. Like the handheld consoles got many games that followed up on and iterated upon Symphony of the Night. But then there were a few 3D Castlevania games on PS2 and then hack-and-slash Castlevania games on PS3, but I feel like those were always secondary to the 2D Metroidvania games. I'd be interested to try the PS2 games and see if those are any better. I'm a sucker for a cool PS2 game, but as for Castlevania 64, it's got all the hallmarks of an unpolished early 3D game when they take things from 2D games and adapt them into 3D directly to mixed or no success. Didn't like this game one bit. But for now, that's all I really have to say on it. Not sure when I'll be talking about Castlevania next and what it would even be about if I did, but I did enjoy this double look back on Symphony of the Night and Castlevania 64 and seeing how these 2 games contrast with each other and how they determined the fate of the series going forward. That was pretty cool, I felt. But that's about all the time we have for today, so now I'll close by saying what I always do. If you made it this far into the video, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.